All right, your hot tag for this week is Collision from 11/9/24. Uh, Lots of good stuff on Collision. I maintain that for somebody who has my taste and sensibilities, Collision is not all the time, but often a better show than Dynamite. This was kind of interesting because there were a lot of matches on this card that were promoted beforehand that you might say, I don't know, these seem kind of like not really like super important in the grand scheme of things. There weren't like any, aside from the women's title match, there weren't like any like, big matches like there were on Dynamite. But yeah, most everything delivered. Starting off, we're going to start off with the men, not because they opened the show, but because I want to circle back around. Danny Garcia versus Johnny TV. Uh, wasn't really so much for the match, so that was good too.
Hmm.
With especially with Johnny TV and MXM collection being together makes so much sense,
It does.
and like it gives something that Hennigan slash Morrison slash Nitro slash Mundo slash whatever TV Johnny TV has never had before. Flunkies. He has never had flunkies before. It reminds me of when Jericho first came in AEW. He'd never been in a stable before. Not a
Yeah.
single one up until that point. That's crazy to think about. Johnny TV has flunkies now. He has understudies or whatever we're gonna call them, like to do his bidding. And I think that's great. I think that's a great spot for all of them because it guarantees Johnny TV more TV time, which he is deserving of, and it gives MXM Collection an, a similar kind of character for them to play off of and have comedic hijinks with. Everybody wins in this scenario. Great idea putting these guys together. That being said, I don't know. You can tell Johnny's getting old.
Hmm.
Uh, Not by his in-ring work, but because his hair was awful. Like I generally don't go on about a wrestler's appearance, but considering that his appearance is a lot of the character of Johnny
Hmm.
TV, like, ooh, dude, your hair is thinning out, and it's like at this point, keep it wet and greased and pulled back tight because it everything else is great. Like Johnny's always had an incredible physique, and that's
Hmm.
not changed at all. If anything, he's put on a little bit more bulk. But like, his hair is betraying his age, and
Hmm.
for a character who kind of is all about image, that is more important than it would be for most other wrestlers. I think.
Yeah.
Um. Anyway, the match itself was good. Uh, Johnny TV dominated a lot of it. But Danny Garcia, my boy, Danny Garcia, my my fellow Buffalonian, he comes back and he has. I think he has to overcompensate because he is kind of undersized to a degree. But
Hmm.
like every time he comes back, he does with such fury and rage that's instantly believable that this guy could mess you up. Like if you got Danny Garcia mad in real life, I'm fairly certain he could beat ever loving tar out of nearly anybody that's around his size or a little bit bigger, maybe even a lot bigger, depending. Um, but yeah, but the angle here is what was most important. Daddy Magic, Matt Menard, was at ringside calling the match because, he and Danny are besties. And we had kind of an echo from Dynamite where Hook came in and absconded with Nick Wayne. Jack Perry, who had earlier come in on his scapegoat bus, he'd come in through the crowd and he took away Daddy Magic while Garcia was getting beaten up and not noticing that it was happening. He beats up Daddy Magic and takes him to the back. Unlike last week, though, this will get followed up upon. Um, but yeah, the finish of the actual match itself comes when Garcia uh, he wins with like a Cobra clutch that's like on the mat. Like
Hmm.
he's like it's almost like a Cobra clutch chin lock thing where he's pulling back on it, almost like the statement maker that Mercedes Monet uses, but with the Cobra clutch. And he gets him to tap out, and then he's celebrating with the crowd, and he realizes Daddy Magic isn't there anymore, and so he goes over to ask Tony Schiavone, where did Matt go? And then on the big screen you see Jack Perry dragging Matt Menard over to the Scapegoat Express or whatever they're calling the bus, and he beats him up a little bit more, and then he wraps a chain around him, and it looks like he's going to drag him. Now, that's something that's very, very charged with a lot of different things. But regardless of extra contexts, from Laramie or whatever, it's still, holy crap, is that a dangerous thing to do? Even to, despite all the baggage that comes with it. But Danny speeds out there. He makes the save right in time. He beats up Jack Perry, and he undoes Matt Menard, and they finally do the thing, Aaron. They finally do the thing I've been begging them to do for months. They made Jack Perry pay for leaving the bus open and the engine running with the keys in there. They finally paid it off. They're listening.
Someone is listening
finally
to us.
Paying it off. So at this point, I know it goes to a commercial because at that point the trailer feed cuts off, and then when it comes back, you see they've tied Jack Perry to the hood of the car with that chain and a whole bunch of other stuff, bro. And they take him on a joyride with Matt Menard took the camera guy's camera, and he's commandeering the camera from inside the bus while he's driving the bus, which is incredibly dangerous on its own. But he's on the hood of the car. Like, Jack Perry, I think, looked at his father's career and is like, man, acting is cool, but what's really cool is stunt work. Because this guy has been strapped to the hood of a bus, a moving bus, a speeding bus, has been set on fire multiple times now, like has gone through real glass of his own volition. This dude is masochistic, and he is very. I think he is like, this is the way I can meld two of my interests into one: pro wrestling and legitimate stunt work. Like, I think he's living his dream. Good for Jack Perry. The only thing I want to say as a negative of this is that they didn't follow it up after they drove out of the arena with them. I wanted to see them like intersperse more. Like, it reminded me of the thing in '95 with the backlot brawl at WrestleMania 12 with Goldust and Roddy Piper, how they interspersed it all throughout with the car chase that was supposed to be O.J. Simpson, and the whole thing. It's like, I wanted to see the rest of the show revolve around them driving him all around Albany. Obviously, that's not something you can do. Probably you need a lot of permits to do that.
Yeah.
But I thought that would have been rad. Like, I really do. You gotta think that there's probably somebody in the police department in Albany that's a wrestling fan that would be like, oh yeah, I'll sign off on that. Yeah. But oh well. But yes, I loved that they finally paid that off. He finally paid for his irresponsible bus shenanigans. Next was La Facción Ingobernable versus the Acclaimed. I was really surprised that this was in the middle of the show, and kind of in the first half a little bit. Like, I felt with the spot in the final spot in the 4-way tag title match at Full Gear on the line, I thought it would be a little bit later as like the semi-main event or whatever, but they did it here. And I mean, it was good. Like, the Acclaimed had they cut an interview with Lexi backstage prior to this where they keep on teasing dissension in minor ways, including the Hurt Business coming up at the end of the segment, encouraging Matt Caster to use his size to his advantage, but completely ignoring Anthony Bowens. And like, they kind of like waved it off or whatever. And then throughout the match, there were like little things where, like, there was one point where Caster kind of frustratedly blind tagged himself in. There was there were a couple of other things where there was just miscommunications and stuff like that, but they still picked up the win. Rush Roosh must really respect Anthony Bowens though, because he was bumping and selling for him like he owed him money, which is very unlike him. Like if you've ever you've seen plenty of Roosh matches, he only sells for the people that he likes. So he must really like Anthony Bowens because he was a maniac for Bowens specifically in this match. Oh, there was one cool spot where he had Caster. You know, he does the thing with the cable, right? He like, chokes somebody with a cable that he finds. Well, Caster turns that on him and he starts choking him. Caster's inside the ring. He's bent through the ropes outside the ring to kind of hang him with it. But Roosh just reaches up and grabs the cord that Caster's holding and then like gives him an iconoclasm out to the floor. And I'm thinking, yeah, there was no way he was going to let Max Caster steal his spot. No, that was on purpose. That was on purpose. That was pitched on purpose to them because he doesn't like Max Caster.
Yeah,
it seems like most people don't. But yeah, miscommunications between the Acclaim boys. They tease the loss here pretty heavily, but eventually they take advantage of the Beast Mortos missing a cannonball senton in the corner. They hit the Arrival and the mic drop combo, but even like, you know, in their celebration after the fact, you know, they all scissored and everything, but Caster was out of the scissoring a little bit quicker than he normally does. Didn't really seem to enjoy it. Didn't really seem like celebrating. You know, it's a lot of little. It's not like big stuff. I appreciate that. It's a lot of like little tiny things because that's what happens in real life generally. Is like when you get, you know, when somebody's bugging you and bugging you and bugging you, it's never really the big things. It's always like the little tiny things. Like when you spend too much time with one person, you know, it's like it's those little things that get to you eventually, you know. So I thought that was really true to life. I like how they're building that. I think that Caster's probably going to get pinned at Full Gear and push that inevitable split. I wish LFI had won, but I get why they weren't booked that way.
Yeah.
Like for this particular, because, you know, the split with the Acclaimed is, I mean, it's a big story. They've been together since nearly the very beginning of AEW. So like them splitting is overdue, but it should be treated like a big deal. It should. We're skipping around again time-wise because of what I want to talk about at the very end. But they ended the show with a video package, which isn't in and of itself isn't bad. But I still feel like they set it up weird. Like they set it up like they were talking about on commentary. It was like Tony was setting up this video package as if he was conducting an in-ring interview. And it was like really weird. And then I immediately didn't care about the weirdness because the video package was rad as hell.
Yeah,
like,
it was
full November Rain, like all 9 minutes of it. And it went down every single story that was heading into Full Gear. Like it reminded me back when WWF used to do that all the time leading into pay-per-views. You know, they would do this. This was standard practice in WWF/E for a long time. They would always end their go-home show with one of the, especially if it was WrestleMania season, they would always end like you remember, I mean, probably the most famous one is the My Way promo.
Yeah.
I mean, that only really had the one story that it focused on, but I mean, that's all anybody was focused on in X7. Like, and it was just, to this day, people talk about how good it was, even if they've soured on Limp Bizkit, because, you know, it was so effective. This reminded me of that. Yeah, like I know this is, like I said earlier, I know this is part of TK's pettiness swiping back at the ECW NXT show, but this really worked for me. And if my Blue Sky feed is any indication, it was almost unanimously a home run with the fan base too.
Yeah, it put me in the mood for this pay-per-view for sure.
Yeah, though why was it on Collision? Why did they do it here? That's the question I have. Like, it wasn't bad. like if it was me, I would put it at the end of this one. If since they've already done it on Collision, I would continue to do that on Dynamite and Rampage as well. Why not? It
Mm-hmm.
got universal acclaim. I don't think people would mind seeing it again. And there are two actual shows that could be considered go home shows to the actual pay per view, whereas this
Mm-hmm.
one was not. It was the
Yeah.
go home Collision, but it wasn't the go home show.
Yeah.
So, my question is like, why here? I ultimately what we got was super awesome. So I'm not really complaining. I'm just very curious, I guess, as to why they chose the first of all why they chose to do it here and why they chose to set it up in such a weird way, as if it was like an event. Like,
Mm-hmm.
did they did they even show it in the arena when they taped it on Thursday?
I hope so.
I don't think so. You know why? Because they had clips of stuff that happened on that show.
Oh, yeah, that's
So,
true.
well, I mean, unless they had, oh, this is where we're going to put whatever spot is supposed to happen here. Like, unless they had some very, very quick editors, I don't think that happened. So I
No,
don't
probably
think that
not.
live crowd saw that. So, like,
Mm.
did they just get a really, really short collision and like extra ROH stuff? I don't know. But like, it was the setup and you know, and the timing were weird, but man, I do think it was outweighed by the quality of the video itself.
Yeah.
Um, if we're still talking, I'm obligated to find some constructive criticism for stuff that I didn't like, but really, there wasn't a lot I didn't like about the show. Just like minor things, like the stuff they already talked about,
Mm-hmm.
not following up on the Scapegoat Express later. Um, Jake Roberts still kind of feels out of place with LFI. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of weird. Max Caster feeling kind of tired to the point where even his raps don't really hit and pop the crowd anymore. Uh, like,
All right.
ultimately, it was a top notch show, but like little tiny tweaks here or there are
Mm-hmm.
necessary. But what I wanted to talk about to end this segment was the complete 180 rebound of what I talked about last week, which was women's wrestling in AEW. Last week was a terrible, terrible week for them, but this collision was a 180 flip. It was a great episode for the women. First of all, you opened up the show with Mina Shirakawa and Harley Cameron. Mina's return match after going back to Japan after the summer. I don't know how exclusive she is to Stardom or AEW or whatever. I imagine whenever her Stardom contract runs out, they will make her all elite for real.
Mm-hmm.
Because they love her and I love her and I want her to be here. I think she is so engaging as a character. Like, I saw her wrestle live when I went to what was it, Dynamite in June? I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was late June. And she and Stephanie Vaquero were on that show too. And like it was, she engages the crowd in a way that I feel like a lot of other Joshi wrestlers don't get the opportunity to, because in most Japanese promotion situations, the crowds are generally more respectful and they're kind of silent and then they'll pop for stuff, but the interaction with the crowd isn't as important as the action in the ring. But Mina is a full blown character. She seems like a big extrovert, seems to revel in the performance aspect of it. Harley Cameron is very much the same way. I I love Harley so much. She's so funny. She's so funny, and she's got that perfect kind of unhinged quality to her that makes her character really fun. Um, people will people will say what they will say about how these two and a couple of other women will go about expressing themselves in the ring, but fact of the matter is, Harley is improving match by match, and Mina is where she needs to be, and she's really really good. These two had some sports entertainment type stuff in there, but the match was solid. Mina has some really cool, unique offense. She won. I think this is why Ricochet started using the Spirit Gun, is because his vertigo is the same as the Glamorous Driver, and they knew that Mina was coming back, so they probably didn't want them to have the same finish under different names.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, she won with a really great spinning back fist, and then into the Glamorous Driver for the win. And then the main event match of the show was the Anna Jay getting into a rubber match, no DQ stip for the World Women's title against Mariah May. And as hard as I've been on Anna Jay in the past several weeks, and I've been pretty critical, this match reminded me that of all the things that she's actually really good at, the surprising thing that she's best at is creative hardcore wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, and you know what? It's the fact that she is so conventionally pretty, conventionally attractive, works in her favor in this, because you wouldn't expect, rightly or wrongly, everybody has their own unconscious societal biases, but you wouldn't think somebody who looks like that is going to be super tough, and you wouldn't think that they'd be willing to put themselves through hell in a match like this. And and that works to her favor because it surprises you every time. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember she's actually really good at this particular style of wrestling. For whatever reason, this seems to be her wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. And I think that surprise that I have every time is refreshing, and I enjoy that feeling. It's like, oh yeah, I keep forgetting about this. Why do I keep forgetting about this? Mm-hmm. Like, this was definitely the best of their three matches. Absolutely, no question about it. Mm-hmm. If I have one criticism, is she did use the Glory Bomb on a ladder and only got a 2 count from it. Oh. Like, that's your finish, and you used it in an assisted way, and it didn't get you the win.
Yeah.
Like, I would have rethought that spot. I would have, if it was me, I would have done it and then sold like I was so exhausted that I couldn't make the cover in time. Mm-hmm. Because that puts over this, that gives the crowd that spot, that great spot, but also protects your finish. That's what I would have done. But it wasn't me in there, and she's far tougher than I am. I mean, you saw that suplex onto the rail, right? Jeez Louise.
Oh yeah, that shit was.
Oh my gosh!
Nasty. I mean, holy crap!
There was no bend on that either. They landed that flat, and that looked awful. I can't imagine how bad those ladies are feeling. They are tough as nails. The match came to an end when Mariah was in the Queen Slayer, but she reached into her pocket to grab a can of, I don't know what it was. They taped it off probably to avoid having to pay the rights to anybody, for mm-hmm. marketing purposes. It was all covered in black tape, but you assume it was like hairspray, or my guess is that it probably was really like spray on deodorant, or something like that.
Brandon Cutler's cold spray.
Yeah, Brandon Cutler's cold spray. Either way, she dug it out of her pocket and sprayed Anna Jay in the eyes with it, and then hit her with probably the gnarliest stump pile driver, like that.
The dent they left in that chair.
That Storm Zero onto the chair was oof. It looked real good and real bad at the same time.
Oh yeah.
And that was the finish. And you know what? I buy it as the finish for sure.
The dent they left in that chair was proof enough for me. Oh.
Yo, no kidding.
Jesus.
But yeah, like overall, women's wrestling on this show was done so much better than it was last week over the course of both shows. Harley Cameron continues to improve every time she gets in there. Mina Shirakawa has a style that's all her own, that complements both serious wrestling and fun, goofy stuff. Mariah May shows that she can actually, this was the first, like, we've seen her get mean, but we hadn't seen her get tough. and this allowed her to show that she can handle like the dirty, gritty, no DQ playgrounds that the women's division often offers its fans from time to time. And AJ reinforcing that despite her in-ring work coming back from Japan, didn't really hold up to the hype that they were giving it. Her wheelhouse is still, oddly enough, this genre of wrestling. Excellent creative main event with the belt on the line. Round of applause. Brava, ladies. Brava.
It was very good. It was very good. Completely. I thought that this match was the best of their three by far.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? I honestly, I think, there's a murderer's row of great AEW women's hardcore matches now. Like, none of them miss. They never miss. Like, even the worst ones are good matches. I still think this is in the top half.
Oh, yeah. It was very good.
Think, so I would, I would pat all those ladies on the back, metaphorically speaking.
Yep. All right. And that's going to lead us to our Call It in the Ring segment.
Yeah.
All
right. We're going to call this one in the ring now.